My wife texted me at 6:42 a.m. on a Sunday. I was cleaning my old M40 rifle, the one I hadn't touched since retirement. The bolt was half disassembled, a cloth soaked in solvent in one hand, when my phone buzzed with a message that didn't even bother to blink twice. Let's be clear, my body is no longer your resource. Deal with it. No preamble. No context. Just that. Like I was a government department she was shutting down. Not a man she'd spent 11 years married to. Just logistics she no longer required. I stared at it for maybe 3 seconds. Then I put the rag down, screwed the bolt back into place with surgical precision, and set the phone down next to the edge of the rifle case. Not on the velvet lining, on the edge. Balanced. Like everything in my life had been since I stopped reacting. Then I typed one word back. Done. No sarcasm. No threats. Not even a question mark. Just a terminal command. Then I got up, walked inside, and opened the drawer I hadn't touched in 6 years. The key had been hanging behind an old family photo of my dad. Vietnam vet. Sharp tongue, sharper memory. He used to say, never forget what someone shows you. Once is enough. Inside the drawer was a manila folder. Thicker than it looked. Hand-labeled in black marker. Contingency, R. I laid it flat on my desk, took a breath, and flipped the first page open. For the men out there still biting their tongues, still waiting for one more chance. Let me offer you this. Silence isn't weakness. It's patience with a scope on it. Also, if you're still listening and not subscribed yet, I'll be real with you. Over 90% of you never hit that button. But it helps the crew here bring you stories like this. So if this hits home already, hit that subscribe. Let's keep going. The folder wasn't filled with petty things. No photos. No screenshots. Nothing you'd post to make strangers feel sorry for you. This was infrastructure. Every agreement. Every clause. Every ownership structure we'd built, especially around her brand, her products, and her public image. Rachel had once told me I had a boring way of loving her. That I loved like a filing cabinet. Cold, locked, but always there. She wanted fireworks. I gave her structure. And that's exactly what was about to bury her. Because when she'd come to me, 6 years ago, wanting to start her mindful health and wellness brand, think yoga mats, powders with names like Energize Essence, and overpriced candles, I didn't just throw cash at it. I gave her something better. A blueprint. We filed it under a family trust. She didn't know that name meant the board members were all chosen by me. Ex-military colleagues, finance guys, old logistics buddies who'd all been through enough courtrooms to know what not to say. Rachel was listed as the public face, the founder, the inspiration. What she didn't read, or didn't care to, was a clause in the operating agreement stating that any public declaration of marital breakdown would trigger a trust-level compliance audit to ensure brand continuity and ethical standard protection. Lawyer talk, buried in the fine print, but powerful, because now, that text, my body is no longer your resource, was more than a declaration of bodily autonomy. It was a legal torpedo, a phrase that activated the kill switch on every soft entitlement she'd built into her world. And I didn't have to say a word. I just printed the message, time-stamped, and added it to the folder. Then I picked up my phone again. Not to call a lawyer. I didn't need one. I was one. Not by degree, but by study. A decade of compliance work had taught me how to speak court better than most bar-passed Ivy League freelancers ever could. I opened my laptop, clicked a file labeled R, exit draft, and updated the first page with the new timestamp. Then I printed it, signed it, and booked a filing appointment at the county courthouse for Tuesday. Rachel thought she was serving a message. She didn't realize she'd just signed for a package she couldn't return. They called my name in the courtroom like they expected a ghost to rise. Mitchell K. Darnell, petitioning pro SE. I stood, wore my best suit, pressed the night before. No tie, no lawyer, no emotion. Rachel sat across from me in a blazer 2 shades too bright and a smile 2 seconds too fast. Her attorney, a smooth-jawed, silver-pin type with a penchant for smirking, tilted his head like he was waiting for a punchline. Your Honor, he said before the judge had even uncapped his pen, my client's husband is filing this petition without representation. We're assuming this is procedural? A placeholder until counsel is retained. He glanced at me, didn't even say my name. I said nothing. The judge, to his credit, didn't bite. Just slid the petition across the bench and began reading aloud, as per protocol. In the matter of Darnell versus Darnell, the petitioner asserts that pursuant to the foundational documents of the Darnell Family Trust, Article 4, Section 3, Any public declaration of marital dissolution shall immediately trigger compliance review of all trust-tied entities, due to provisions ensuring reputational preservation. His voice slowed. Not dramatically, just enough to cause a ripple. Rachel blinked. Her attorney leaned forward, the corners of his mouth beginning to dip. Your Honor, may I review that document privately? The judge didn't even look up. No, counselor. We're in session. That's when Rachel shifted. Not visibly, but in the way a person leans back in a chair they realize isn't actually stable. You wouldn't see it unless you knew what to look for. And I did, because she forgot about the clause. We signed it 6 years ago, when her business was nothing but a Pinterest board and a dream. She came to me with a smile and a stack of articles about natural branding and personal empowerment. She wanted capital. I gave her my pension, deferred, tax-secured, from my military career. She said she'd never ask for more. So I asked for one thing: control of the structure. Not of her, of the paperwork. The trust was a standard protective measure. At least that's how I framed it. But buried in it was a clause I'd borrowed, ironically, from one of her own wellness coaching PDFs. In the event of energetic misalignment, conduct a full integrity audit. I adapted it to legalese. Worded it to say, if either party publicly disavows the marriage, the entire business structure must be audited for ethical alignment and continuity of trust. She thought it was symbolic. Cute. She laughed when she signed. Now it was Exhibit A, and her little text about her body no longer being my resource. That wasn't a feminist mic drop. That was a legally actionable declaration of marital breakdown. On a public device. Timestamped. Stored. Submitted. The judge flipped the page. Per this clause, the triggering event has occurred, and the trust enters a protective phase pending compliance verification. All assets currently disbursed under the business entity fall under administrative freeze until the audit concludes. Rachel's lawyer cut in again. Your Honor, if I may, this clause wasn't intended for enforcement. The judge looked up. Finally. Then why was it signed? And notarized? Silence. I sat with my hands folded. No reaction. See, I didn't need to win a debate. I needed the process to activate. Once it did, everything else moved on its own. The audit was automatic. The freeze was mechanical. The paper did what I never had to say aloud. Her lawyer shot a glare at me. I met it like a man looking at a malfunctioning printer. Annoying, but not my problem. Because I wasn't fighting her. I was just initiating a protocol she herself had authorized. And that's the part that started to sink in, for both of them. This wasn't a courtroom showdown. This was a compliance event. Rachel's brand, which she'd spent the last half-decade building on the backs of Instagram followers and weekend retreats with words like intentionality and sacred cycles, was now under legal lockdown. Not because I was angry, because she'd pulled the trigger with her own words. There were still 27 pages in the petition the judge hadn't read yet. He would. And by page 6, the smirking would stop. Rachel used to say she was the heart of her business. That her vision, her energy, her feminine alignment was what brought in the clients, the influencers, the morning show hosts with 2 white teeth and pre-written compliments. And maybe she was right. She could light up a room, speak in clean, curated phrases that made people feel like they were being seen, heard, elevated. She had that gift. She just never had the spine underneath it. That was my job. She wanted to build a clean wellness empire. But empires don't run on moon phases and hashtags. They run on contracts, inspections, licenses you don't get from Canva templates. When she first pitched Elemental Body, that was the name she chose after a weekend retreat in Sedona where a shaman told her she was a fire essence trapped in a water shell. She was high on momentum and low on facts. No supplier, no warehouse, no idea what FDA registration actually required. But I had contacts. Men and women I'd worked with in my military logistics days. People who had since moved into civilian compliance, import-export control, nutraceutical sourcing. Quiet professionals who didn't care about turmeric latte aesthetics. They cared about seals, documents, chain of custody, labels that wouldn't get flagged by the FTC. I made one call to my old colleague Halverson in Maryland. He lined up the supplier chain. Another to an old buddy in Virginia who ran QA inspections for domestic supplement facilities. The contracts were tight, and every single one was routed through the trust I'd already had set up for asset protection after my military retirement. She didn't ask about the paperwork. She just liked that her stuff was suddenly on shelves in boutique spas and online in sleek brown glass jars with earth-tone fonts. And the board? Never once in a photo. Never once invited to her launch parties. But they were real. 3 men and 1 woman. all of whom I'd handpicked. Not because they'd side with me, but because they understood how to disappear and still hold the switch. Rachel was listed publicly as the founder and CEO, but the voting rights? Retained by the trust. Revocable upon breach of brand alignment, which included reputational damage from any founding member. Her text? A direct hit to that clause. I watched the realization crawl across her face in court as the language was read out. Not dramatic, but unmistakable, like someone noticing a fire alarm blinking red in the corner of the room. You keep pretending you didn't see it until the sprinklers start. That clause was written with intention. I remember the night I added it, sitting alone in the office, rereading one of her social captions. My body is my source, not a shared asset. At the time, I laughed it off. Later, I translated it into legal policy. So when the trust received the court-acknowledged petition referencing her public disavowal of the marital partnership, it didn't need my input. It triggered automatic review, notification letters, pause on disbursements, internal messaging to all vendors flagged under potential risk. She wouldn't even see it until the first bounce-back email. And this wasn't just about money. It was about control. Rachel had built an empire on the illusion of ownership, of power, of her story, her terms. But the scaffolding was always mine. She just decorated it. Now, the scaffolding was pulling itself apart. Because a trust doesn't care about emotions. It responds to criteria, risk triggers, violations. And that's exactly what her text was. The irony? She'd posted a selfie that same week with the caption, "Built this from scratch." No one can take that away. She was wrong. I didn't have to take anything. She gave it away when she stopped reading. She gave it away when she decided her brand was bigger than the agreements behind it. She gave it away the moment she weaponized the language she never understood. And now? Now, the thing she thought was her fortress was just a well-decorated paper wall, about to collapse. It started at the smoothie bar. Rachel tried to buy a $12 spirulina shot combo with some kind of ginger foam, swiped her Amex, and watched the screen flash. Declined. She laughed it off, loud enough for the cashier and the woman behind her to hear. That's weird. It's never declined. She pulled out her backup, her personal debit tied to the Elemental Body Business Overflow account. The one she used for spa days, influencer collabs, and those weekly infrared saunas she wrote off as brand alignment expenses. Declined. This time, she didn't say anything, just muttered, "Let me check something," as she thumbed through her phone and walked out with a paper straw she didn't get to use. The first real crack wasn't the transaction. It was the silence from her banking app. Unable to refresh account data. Please try again later. At home, she logged into her brand's backend, expecting to see the usual rolling dashboard of numbers, Shopify orders, affiliate payouts, and influencer links. Instead, she saw one short, bright red banner. Payment processor activity suspended, pending internal trust compliance audit. No funds may be moved at this time. She called customer support. She never calls customer support. The rep was polite, almost too polite. Kept saying the same phrase. "We are unable to comment on internal trust audits. Thank you for your patience." That's when she called her lawyer. "I'm locked out," she said. Like actually locked out. Funds frozen. Processor frozen. Emails aren't going out to the mailing list. My account dashboard is showing red flags like we committed fraud. He replied with a smirk in his voice. "It's probably a glitch. Don't worry. I'll call their legal." He didn't sound worried. Yet, he made the call. Spoke to someone at the compliance desk at my former consulting firm, the same place I'd done back-end reviews for over a decade. The person who picked up the phone gave a name, then followed it with a phrase I once taught them personally how to say. "We cannot comment on trust proceedings, but thank you for verifying receipt of audit protocol." Click. Rachel's lawyer called her back. "Okay, there's definitely some activity on their end, but they're stonewalling. I'm filing a motion for clarification tomorrow. Should be routine." But Rachel didn't hear the word routine. She heard activity, and audit, and trust. The same trust she once brushed off as Mitchell's legal safety net. She opened her email. Nothing from her vendors. No updates from the newsletter team. Just one message from her brand's fulfillment warehouse. Deliveries paused pending review of contractual authority. She read it 3 times. Contractual authority? She was the CEO. She was the brand. But suddenly, her signature didn't carry the weight it used to. And what she didn't realize, what she couldn't have realized, is that the dominoes weren't falling randomly. They were falling in the exact order I designed. That trust? It wasn't just a financial structure. It was a behavior-triggered system. Silent unless prompted. Automatic once tripped. And the triggering language? She'd texted it. publicly. When the clause activated, it didn't freeze her. It froze the entity. That meant accounts, vendors, shipping schedules, domain auto-renewals, licensing reviews. Everything locked under the umbrella of trust-secured activity. She tried to post to her 60K followers. Her app glitched. The caption wouldn't publish. She logged in via desktop. The admin credentials had been reset. She called the IT manager, on contract through a third-party vendor. He apologized, said he received a suspension of access notice signed by the board. She screamed, "You know me. I am the board." He said nothing, because Rachel finally realized something. Being the face of something isn't the same as being its foundation. And the foundation was no longer taking her calls. The next morning, she woke to 4 emails, 2 voicemails, and a text from someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year, an old supplier rep from Idaho who once gifted her hand-painted chakra stones at a wellness expo. The email was short. Subject: Documentation Review Request. Hi Rachel. We've been contacted by Internal Audit Counsel regarding discrepancies in the compliance paperwork for SKUs 1142 through 1189, specifically around labeling, authorization, and contract renewal signatures. Please advise who currently holds operational signatory control. We've been asked to route all updates through the Trust Compliance Desk, not your office. She didn't even make it through the second paragraph before she swore out loud and dropped her phone into her turmeric oatmeal. The second message came from a marketing partner who used to fawn over her Insta lives like a teenage groupie. Now he was texting like she was radioactive. Hey Ratch, quick cue. Why is the FDA's secondary license for Elemental supplement line under a compliance agent named Halverson? He's not on your site anymore. We just need to confirm the chain of custody before we greenlight the second quarter ad buys. Halverson, my old friend, retired Navy, now full-time shadow. She had met him twice, called him Mr. Spreadsheet, and rolled her eyes. He held her product line in his inbox. But the real slap came at 11:07 a.m. in a sterile email from a national chain she'd been publicly teasing a rollout with, just 6 days away. Dear Rachel, due to unresolved documentation queries regarding proprietary sourcing and trust governance review, we are pausing the onboarding of Elemental body products pending confirmation of operational authority. We appreciate your understanding. Her hands were shaking when she read it. Not from fear, from confusion. She hadn't said anything publicly beyond that one text. She hadn't posted rants, hadn't thrown a tantrum online. Mitchell hadn't, either. He'd gone silent after court. No interviews, no tweets, no leaks. So how was this unraveling so fast? She didn't understand that silence is a language, and Mitchell had been fluent for years. Because all of her empire, every single connection she had bragged about at influencer retreats, at dinner parties, in her endless podcasts about building legacy with integrity, had been formed on paper that he drafted, through contacts he vetted, platforms he set up. She never bothered to learn how any of it worked. She just made it look good. And now, one by one, those same contacts were quietly pulling their hands away. Not with outrage, not with drama, just professional distance. Because they were all rereading their own contracts, digging through the email chains, checking the fine print on the service-level agreements, and seeing his name. Or worse, seeing no name at all, just the trust's signature block, with a clause that now meant something different. One of her brand's formulation partners, usually too friendly by half, left her a voicemail that was practically forensic. Rachel, we've had 2 separate inquiries about document trail legitimacy from your trust's audit desk. If there's been an ownership transfer, please confirm chain of command. Otherwise, we'll have to freeze development until clarity is restored. Sorry, she didn't even know what half those words meant anymore. And that was the point. She had spent years convincing herself she was the architect. She wasn't. She was a tenant. And the landlord had quietly revoked access. What made it worse was the absence of noise. Mitchell hadn't posted a single thing. No gloating. No angry counters. He wasn't leaking anything. The documents were. And they weren't whispering. They were screaming. Not to the public, but to the back end. To the vendors. To the accountants. To the regulators. All of them realizing she didn't actually own what she said she did. She just looked good holding it. Now, she was standing alone in a building with no keys, no authority, and an inbox that was slowly turning cold. Rachel stormed into the Elemental Body headquarters at 8:31 a.m. in heels she hadn't worn in months and a blazer she used to call her boardroom armor. The staff recognized the look on her face, the don't talk unless you want to bleed look. Phones slid into pockets. A junior manager slipped into the bathroom to avoid eye contact. She pushed open the frosted glass conference room door, expecting to find chaos. Instead, she found a meeting, already in session. 5 people seated, calm, focused, quiet. 3 men, 1 woman, and an empty 5th chair at the far end of the table with a single sheet of paper laid neatly in front of it. Her chair. No one looked surprised to see her. In the center of the table sat a recording device. Active. A red light blinking slowly. The woman at the head of the table, Sandra, one of the trust's compliance officers, looked up and said in the same tone one might use to acknowledge a weather update. "We're in closed session. You'll need to wait." Rachel's voice sliced through the air. "This is my company." Sandra didn't flinch. Instead, she read aloud, as if Rachel hadn't spoken. Pursuant to Article 6, Section D of the Elemental Body Operational Charter, Ms. Rachel Darnell has activated clause-level review by publicly disassociating from the founding structure, thus suspending all autonomous executive functions pending outcome of audit. Rachel's jaw tensed. That clause doesn't apply here. That's for financial misconduct or... It also applies to material reputational harm to the trust, Sandra interrupted. As explicitly defined in Exhibit G, which you signed on March 14, 2019. Your statement, and its corroborating timestamp, fall within those parameters. Rachel's hands curled at her sides. "Where's Mitchell?" "Not required for this session," someone else said without looking up. The door opened behind her. Her attorney, Nolan, walked in, tie half straightened, coffee stain blooming down his sleeve. "Sorry, parking was... Wait, what the hell is this?" Sandra slid a printed agenda toward him without getting up. Clause-level review per trust bylaws. Governance and suspension. Authority delegated to temporary oversight panel until legal resolution. Nolan scanned the first page. Paused. "Read slower." "Absolutely not," he said. "This is a hostile action. You're exceeding scope. My client retains controlling interest." "Incorrect," Sandra replied. "Your client retains public presence. Controlling interest resides in the founding trust, whose bylaws you are evidently unfamiliar with." Nolan's face flushed. "You're redefining terms." "No," she said, leaning back. "We're applying them." Rachel's gaze darted around the room, waiting for someone to side with her. No one met her eyes. Because these weren't the yoga instructors and content creators she brought on for authenticity. These were Mitchell's people. Quiet, paper-wielding, fluent in every clause she skimmed over. "You don't understand how this will look," she said, grabbing at something, anything. "I built this brand. People follow me. I'm the reason Elemental is worth anything." A man across the table, older, with a Veterans Affairs pin on his lapel, replied calmly, "That may be true. But value built on structure remains with the structure. You were never the structure." Nolan stepped forward. "I'm demanding executive session. My client has a right to be heard." Sandra shook her head. She had the right to abide by her agreements. She chose otherwise. Authority lies where the bylaws place it. Rachel slapped a palm down on the table. "So what? I'm a ghost now? I don't get a say in the brand I made." "You had a say," Sandra said, closing the folder in front of her. "You texted it to him." Silence. Then someone, one of the others, maybe Halverson, added, "You're not being erased. You're being reviewed." That's what clause-level activation means. Rachel turned to Nolan. "Fix this." But Nolan looked at the agenda again, at the signatures already at the bottom, the timestamps, the unflinching posture of people who'd been briefed, prepared, and signed off well before they walked in. I'll file a counter motion," he mumbled, already knowing it was too late. Because power isn't what you post, or what you wear into a room. It's who owns the table. And Rachel just realized the table had never been hers. Court resumed on a rain-slick Tuesday, the kind of gray morning that makes everything feel quieter than it should be. Rachel arrived first, flanked by Nolan and another junior associate. This one with a laptop, 3 legal pads, and the look of someone hoping not to be noticed. Mitchell entered 5 minutes later. Alone. No papers. No laptop. No visible folder. He wore the same suit as last time, same calm face. He took his seat, crossed one leg, and folded his hands in his lap like he was waiting for a train, not a verdict. Rachel didn't look at him. Nolan did, though, and for a split second, his confidence faltered. Then the show began. "Your Honor," Nolan started, standing with practiced solemnity. "We intend to demonstrate that the petitioner's actions constitute a long pattern of emotional abandonment, financial coercion, and power imbalance within the marital structure." He motioned to Rachel, who gave a small, performative nod. "Mrs. Darnell, Excuse me, Ms. Darnell, entered this marriage at a significant age and financial disadvantage, trusting her husband to support her dreams. Instead, we believe he used his legal experience to embed predatory clauses and strip her of what she rightfully earned. The judge did not respond. He simply turned a page in the binder Mitchell had filed weeks ago. Before we continue, the judge said, not unkindly, I'd like to enter Exhibit B into the record. Rachel straightened. Nolan looked up from his notes. The clerk walked the document over. A single page, thick with legalese, under a standard elemental body letterhead dated 5 years prior. The judge began to read. This agreement affirms that any equity granted to Rachel Darnell from the Darnell Family Trust or its subsidiaries is to be considered non-vested and revocable upon violation of family partnership terms as outlined in sections 4 through 7 of the trust charter. Any breach, material, reputational, or structural, will result in immediate reassignment of said equity under clause-triggered default ownership. He paused, looked up. This was signed and notarized. Ms. Darnell, is this your signature? Rachel leaned toward Nolan, whispering fast and tight. Nolan cleared his throat. Your Honor, we'd like to challenge the enforceability of that clause. It was signed under conditions we now consider coercive. The judge didn't blink. Are you saying the signature is forged? No, Nolan said. We're saying she didn't fully understand what she was signing. The judge raised an eyebrow. Ms. Darnell holds herself out as the CEO of a multi-million-dollar health company. Are you stating for the record that she did not understand a standard equity clause in a one-page agreement? Nolan hesitated. She wasn't represented at the time. Because, the judge said, voice sharpening, she declined counsel. It's in the notes from the original trust assembly meeting. She signed a waiver. Right here. He flipped the page, held it up. Rachel stared. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mitchell didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because everything Rachel's legal team had prepared, pages of narrative, allegations, damage claims, hinged on the idea that she had built something together with him and was now being cut out unfairly. But Exhibit B didn't show partnership. It showed a gift. Conditional, structured, reversible. The judge continued. The triggering event in question, the text message sent on April 3rd at 6:42 a.m., stating, let's be clear, my body is no longer your resource. Deal with it, meets the definition of reputational disassociation under the language of the clause. Nolan raised a finger. We object to that interpretation. On what grounds? He blinked. Subjective context. Emotional language. The judge stared. You're objecting to the meaning of a direct sentence? A sentence your client has since confirmed publicly, in interviews and on record? Silence. Rachel stared down at the table. And for the first time since this began, since her declaration, since the smirks, since the quiet smolder of control, her posture broke. Because it had finally sunk in. Every page she hadn't read. Every clause she called just legal stuff. Every trust meeting she skipped to attend a podcast interview. Every gift she accepted without question. They were here now, lined up like bricks, forming a wall she couldn't get past. The judge turned to Mitchell. Do you wish to make a statement, Mr. Darnell? Mitchell looked up slowly. No, Your Honor. And that was it. Because when the structure is sound, you don't need to shout. You just let it stand. It started as a throwaway post on a niche divorce support forum, a late-night rant thread titled, When They Pretend It Was All Theirs. The user posted a screenshot of the now infamous text, blurred out Mitchell's name, but left the time and phrasing intact. The caption read, She built a wellness empire. He built the infrastructure. This is how she told him it was over. Below it, the text message. Let's be clear, my body is no longer your resource. Deal with it. At first, the responses were predictable. Eye rolls, sympathy, a few jaded takes from people who'd been through similar endings. But by morning, someone had reverse image searched the text font. Then another found a podcast clip where Rachel read that very phrase as part of her post-empowerment mantra on a show called Vibrate Higher with Crystal Dawn. From there, it took less than 36 hours for the digital trail to converge. Her name, her brand, her wellness page. And suddenly, the story wasn't on a support forum anymore. It was on Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. Side-by-side comparisons of her glowing brand bio, built from nothing. Woman-owned, rooted in honesty. Next to screen caps of the court petition excerpts leaked by someone who'd clearly sat in that courtroom. Not Mitchell. He hadn't said a word. It was a former assistant, someone she'd laid off via email with a one-line message during a branding reorg. The assistant had kept notes, dates, PDFs, and a petty grudge seasoned perfectly for the internet. She didn't drop nukes, just facts. Attached to the viral thread was a single note. Y'all should know who really built Elemental Body. Look up the trust documents. Public filings are free. Pay attention to the dates. That was all it took. Now, her Instagram wasn't filled with affirmations and sponsored retreat posts. It was flooded with comments. Is this how you treat your business partner? Wait, didn't he fund the entire launch? So you borrowed his pension, then ghosted him with that text? Explain the trust clause. Why are all your product licenses under someone named Halverson? Rachel started deleting comments. But you can't mop a flood. Screenshots spread faster than she could hit delete. Her followers, mostly women who thought they were watching a self-made spiritual entrepreneur, were now questioning everything. And then the sponsors noticed. One by one, emails came in. In light of the emerging controversy, we're pausing the partnership until further clarity is provided. Our legal has advised us to remove your links until ownership structure is confirmed. An influencer she'd partnered with 3 times, a fitness coach with 1 million YouTube subs, posted a blunt story. I just found out I've been selling a product line built on a lie. That's not okay. Affiliate link removed. Sorry to everyone who bought. Rachel tried to spin it. She posted a reel, carefully lit, softly spoken, using this soothing green background she reserved for crisis. I want to acknowledge that relationships are complicated, that sometimes people's truths don't align, and that healing means reclaiming our power. It was a masterclass in saying nothing. The top comment? Just say you screwed over the guy who built your business. The second? This isn't healing. It's PR. She tried one more tactic, a carousel post of handwritten notes, vintage photos, a picture of her and Mitchell at their first trade show. The caption read, "Growth means letting go of what no longer serves you." People weren't buying it anymore. Because the screenshots didn't lie. Because the filings were real. Because her text, once a private jab cloaked as empowerment, had become evidence. And once it was out there, it wasn't a statement of strength. It was a confession. The comment sections turned. Her DMs went quiet. And through all of it, Mitchell said nothing. He didn't have to. The truth wasn't just leaking. It was trending. By the time Nolan filed the emergency motion, even he knew it was a dead sprint into a brick wall. But Rachel was unraveling fast, and he needed to be seen trying. That's how lawyers like him survive reputational implosions, performing effort like theater, just in case anyone's still watching. The motion was typed in a flurry, alleging procedural misconduct, reputational sabotage, covert asset disenfranchisement, and a dozen other phrases meant to sound surgical, not desperate. But the judge wasn't biting. They all gathered again. Third time. Same courtroom. Smaller crowd. No media. No fanfare. Just fallout. Rachel sat rigid, eyes locked forward, face void of color. Her brand was now under formal audit. Vendor contracts suspended. Affiliate codes pulled. Multiple sponsors had issued quiet cease and desist notices. Even her email list had been flagged as in dispute by their CRM vendor. She had become untouchable. Not scandalous, just radioactive. And now she was here, clinging to a last hope that the judge might see Mitchell's actions as too sharp, too premeditated, too cold. Nolan stood with the confidence of a man who knew he was bluffing into a hurricane. "Your Honor," he began, "we respectfully submit this emergency motion seeking injunctive relief from the systemic dismantling of my client's business operations, which, regardless of contractual nuance, have been weaponized through mechanisms not intended for dissolution but for governance." The judge blinked. "Counselor, I've read your filing. I also reviewed your client's original agreements. This isn't weaponization. It's execution." Rachel flinched. Nolan tried again. "We're not disputing the legality. We're disputing the intent. The spirit. Mr. Darnell is using the machinery of their past to erase her future. This isn't equitable." The judge folded his hands. "And yet, it's enforceable. Every clause, every signature, every waiver, every board vote. Your client acknowledged them. Repeatedly. In writing. For years." He turned to Mitchell, seated as always, calm, silent, with the patience of someone who's already done the hard part. "Mr. Darnell," the judge asked, almost cautiously, "do you have any comment before I issue my ruling?" And for the first time since that original text message, Mitchell spoke. 10 words. Measured. Precise. Quiet. "Your Honor, I don't want vengeance. I want closure." It wasn't a speech. It was a scalpel. The room didn't move. Even Nolan, who had prepared counters for 1,000 scenarios, had nothing. Because what do you say to a man who's already finished mourning? What do you say to someone who doesn't want to win, just wants it over? The judge nodded. Not because of sympathy, because of respect. Respect for the kind of silence that doesn't come from fear, but from discipline. Motion denied, the judge said, pen scratching across the docket. The structure stands. The audit proceeds. No stay will be granted. Nolan opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left to file, no backdoor to sneak through. Too many documents. Too many acknowledgments. Too much precision wrapped in too much patience. Rachel's shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but in something worse. Acceptance. She knew now. Every moment, she dismissed Mitchell as distant. Every time she joked that he loved more like a compliance manual than a man. Every time she substituted his loyalty for lack of presence. He wasn't absent. He was building the walls she'd one day run into. Mitchell stood, gave the slightest nod to the judge. No gloating. No glance at Rachel. Just one last moment of calm in a courtroom that had seen the slow, methodical end of a marriage disguised as a brand. Outside, reporters waited for statements. Only one man walked out, and he didn't say a word. It arrived in an unmarked envelope. No company logo, no wax seal, no threatening font stamped across the top, just her name, typed in the center like junk mail. Rachel had been ignoring her mailbox for days. After everything online, after the affiliate collapse, the DM silence, the hashtags calling for transparent ownership practices, she didn't want more bad news. She wanted silence. She wanted the storm to end. But something about this envelope felt unfinished. Like it didn't care if she opened it or not. That bothered her more than she'd admit. Inside, a single-page document. Clean. Formal. Final. Pursuant to clause-triggered reassignment and operational audit review, Ms. Rachel Darnell is hereby removed from all executive, fiduciary, and representative positions within the Elemental Body enterprise. All references to her likeness, authorship, and strategic contributions are to be retracted in accordance with brand integrity guidelines. Effective immediately. Below that, a simple signature block. Dated. Stamped. Legal. No emotion. No accusation. Just the final act of a protocol she never believed would run without her. Stapled to the back was a half-sheet note. Not typed. Handwritten. Resource management, done right. Good luck. No name. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Blocky. Measured, like everything Mitchell ever touched. She dropped the envelope onto her kitchen counter, same counter she used to shoot her Instagram recipe reels from. The lighting now felt harsh, like it wasn't made for her anymore. She rushed to her laptop. Opened the Elemental Body website. It loaded. Same color palette. Same branding. Same scrolling product images with softly glowing jars and serene fonts. But something was off. Her face, gone. Her founder's letter, removed. The About Us section now featured a quiet manifesto about structure, discipline, and trust-based integrity. It didn't name anyone. It didn't need to. She clicked on the press page. A new headline topped the feed. Elemental Body transitions to trust-governed leadership model. A new era of silent strength. The irony twisted like a knife. She searched her name. Nothing. Not scrubbed. Never there. She tried to log into the back-end dashboard. Access denied. She tried her admin Gmail. Password incorrect. She clicked Forgot Password. The recovery address? Deleted. She opened her banking app. Authentication failed. She tried another. Error. The accounts had been under the business umbrella. Business tied to the trust. Trust now under full lock. She'd assumed, until that very moment, that there'd be something left. A fallback. A fragment. A whisper of ownership she could cling to, resurrect in a memoir or podcast someday. But there wasn't. Because Mitchell hadn't destroyed her. He'd deleted her. Not from anger. From the system. Like you would a bad line of code. No alerts. No drama. Just gone. She sat back in the same chair where she'd once filmed her Conscious Divorce series, smiling with that polished vulnerability, talking about release, empowerment, abundance. Now she just stared at the wall. Not crying. Not panicking. Because there was nothing to fight. No villain. Just a silence that stretched long and permanent. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention. The kind that says, you were never in control. You were just renting space.